coworkers laugh. But nothing could have prepared him for the ultimate prank war that was about to unfold. It all started on a Monday morning when Elliot walked into his cubicle and found that his chair was missing. In its place was a giant inflatable flamingo. A note taped to its beak read, *, nice try, Carter. Love, Linda *. Linda Harper, head of HR, was the last person Elliot expected to be a prankster. She was known for her strict policies and serious demeanor. But this was a challenge. Elliot grinned. All right, Linda. Game on. The next day, Linda arrived to find her entire desk wrapped in aluminum foil, including her stapler, phone, and even her coffee mug. The whole office erupted in laughter as she peeled off layers of shiny metal just to answer a call. She narrowed her eyes at Elliot but smirked. You think that's clever? Just wait. The war escalated quickly. Elliot's stapler was mysteriously encased in jello. Linda's office door was covered in post-it notes spelling out "Revenge is sweet." One morning, Elliot turned on his computer only to find that every single key on his keyboard had been rearranged. The battle had everyone in the office choosing sides. Some secretly helped Linda while others rooted for Elliot. The CEO, Mr. Thompson, pretended to disapprove but was often caught watching from his office, chuckling behind his coffee mug. Then came the final showdown. Elliot spent an entire weekend preparing. Early Monday morning, he arrived before anyone else and replaced Linda's office chair with a motorized one he could control remotely. He hid in the break room, clutching the remote with giddy anticipation. At 9 a.m., Linda entered, sat down, and zoom. Her chair rolled backward. She grabbed the desk, eyes wide. The office burst into laughter. Then, with a mischievous glint, Linda pulled out a remote of her own. Elliot's eyes widened. No way. With a press of a button, his own chair lurched forward, sending him rolling across the office. The two engaged in a ridiculous battle of remote-controlled chairs, dodging desks and water coolers while the entire staff cheered them on. Just as Elliot thought he had the upper hand, Linda's chair stopped abruptly, sending her into a perfect spin right into Mr. Thompson's office. Silence. Linda sat frozen as Mr. Thompson looked up from his papers. Then, to everyone's shock, he grinned. Best Monday ever. From that day on, the prank war ended in a truce, but the legend of the great office prank war lived on. Elliot and Linda became an unstoppable comedic duo, and work was never boring again. The Great Bakery Heist. Jimmy and Kevin were best friends, but they were also two of the most clueless criminals in town. Their brilliant idea? Rob the most popular bakery in the city, Sweet Delights, at midnight when no one was around. It was supposed to be an easy job. But of course, nothing ever went as planned. ### the genius plan. Jimmy leaned over the table in their tiny apartment, drawing on a napkin. All right, listen up. We sneak in through the back, grab the cash from the register, and get out. Simple. Kevin nodded. Wait, what about the alarm? Jimmy waved a hand. Bakeries don't have alarms. Kevin scratched his head. Are you sure? Jimmy scoffed. It's a place for cakes, not a bank. That was all the convincing Kevin needed. They put on their disguises, fake mustaches and sunglasses, because obviously, that made them unrecognizable, and headed out. ### breaking in, kind of. When they arrived at Sweet Delights, they realized the back door was locked. Kevin whispered, Plan B. Jimmy sighed. All right, we climb through that window. Kevin looked up at the tiny window. That window? I barely fit in my own hoodie. Jimmy groaned. Just push me up. Kevin boosted Jimmy, who wriggled halfway through before getting completely stuck. His legs dangled outside, while his head and arms were inside the bakery. Kevin panicked. Do I pull you out or push you in? Jimmy, struggling, gasped, just do something. Kevin gave a mighty push, sending Jimmy crashing onto a stack of flour bags. A cloud of white powder exploded everywhere. Kevin climbed in after him, shaking his head. Great. Now we look like ghost burglars. #### the unexpected customers. They tiptoed toward the cash register when suddenly, the lights flicked on. Welcome to Sweet Delights. How can I help you? Jimmy and Kevin froze. A young woman in an apron stood behind the counter, smiling brightly. Kevin whispered, "Why is she here?" "It's midnight." Jimmy cleared his throat. We would like a cake." The woman beamed. "Oh. A midnight craving, huh? We get those a lot. What flavor?" Kevin, still dazed, blurted, "Chocolate." She nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. Jimmy hissed, "What are you doing?" "We're supposed to rob the place." Kevin shrugged. "She caught us. What else was I supposed to say?" #### the donut disaster. They tried sneaking toward the register again when Kevin's foot hit a tray of fresh donuts. He slipped, grabbing Jimmy for balance. They both tumbled to the floor, sending pastries flying everywhere. The woman returned, holding a cake. "Oh no. Are you guys okay?" Jimmy groaned. "Yeah, totally fine." She tilted her head. "Wait a second. Are you two trying to rob us?" Kevin gasped. "What? No, we just love midnight snacks." She raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you covered in flour?" Jimmy stammered, surprise baking contest." She laughed. "Well, if you're going to be here, you might as well help bake. Otherwise, I'm calling the cops." #### the unexpected career change. With no better option, Jimmy and Kevin found themselves wearing aprons and following her instructions. They mixed batter, shaped cookies, and even decorated cakes. Surprisingly, Kevin had a talent for frosting. "Dude," Jimmy whispered. "I think we just became bakers." By morning, the shop opened, and customers flooded in. The woman, whose name was Sarah, grinned. "You two are pretty good. Want a job?" Kevin looked at Jimmy. "Well, it's better than robbing the place." Jimmy sighed. "Fine. But I'm keeping the mustache." And that's how the worst criminals in town accidentally became the best bakers the city had ever seen. Title: The Hilarious Hotel Hijinks. Martin Wells had always dreamed of running a 5-star hotel. After years of hard work, he finally became the manager of the Grand Oak Hotel, a luxurious establishment known for its impeccable service and elite clientele. Martin took great pride in maintaining absolute professionalism until one fateful week when chaos descended upon his beloved hotel. It all began when an eccentric millionaire named Howard Grimshaw booked the presidential suite. Rumors swirled among the staff that Grimshaw had a strange sense of humor and enjoyed testing the patience of hoteliers. Martin dismissed the gossip. How bad could he be, he thought. The answer came at 6 a.m. when Grimshaw called the front desk, demanding 100 rubber ducks be placed in his bathtub before he took a bath. Martin, believing it was a joke, laughed politely until Grimshaw sternly reminded him that he was very serious. Within an hour, a bellhop was running through the hotel with armfuls of rubber ducks. By noon, Grimshaw had escalated. He requested that room service deliver a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but only if the peanut butter was spread in a clockwise motion and the jelly counterclockwise. The chef, baffled but intrigued, complied. At 3 p.m., Grimshaw called again, stating that his room lacked a sufficient sense of adventure. When Martin asked what he meant, Grimshaw simply replied, "Surprise me." Martin sighed. He gathered his best staff, and they set up an elaborate scavenger hunt inside Grimshaw's suite, complete with hidden notes, many treasures, and a final clue that led to a complimentary bottle of champagne. When Grimshaw found the last clue, he burst into laughter and left a generous tip for every staff member involved. Just when Martin thought he had things under control, a wedding party checked in that evening. The bride's cousin, Kevin, was notorious for his mischievous behavior. Within an hour, Kevin had stolen the bellhop's hat, replaced the lobby's soothing classical music with chicken sound effects, and convinced a group of elderly guests that the hotel was haunted. Martin nearly lost his temper when he caught Kevin sneaking a live parrot borrowed from a local pet store into the reception hall. As Martin chased Kevin down the hallway, he collided with Grimshaw, who had been carrying a stack of newspapers. The newspapers went flying, Kevin tripped over them, and both men landed in a tangled heap. For a moment, there was silence. Then Grimshaw, still on the floor, burst into laughter. "This," he said between wheezes, "is the best hotel I've ever stayed in." Kevin, also laughing, declared, "I didn't know this place came with live entertainment." The wedding guests, Grimshaw, and even the usually grumpy chef erupted in applause. Martin, exhausted and covered in newspaper ink, realized something: his hotel was still running, guests were happy, and no one had actually gotten hurt. Maybe a little chaos wasn't the worst thing in the world. By the next morning, the Grand Oak Hotel had gone viral on social media. Guests raved about their unexpected adventure. Grimshaw extended his stay, stating he wanted to see what would happen next. Even Kevin, much to Martin's chagrin, promised to return for another performance. Martin had set out to create a dignified, prestigious hotel. Instead, he ended up running the most delightfully unpredictable one in the city, and he wouldn't have it any other way. The Misadventures of Larry and Bob. Larry and Bob were two best friends with an incredible talent for getting into ridiculous situations. One evening, they decided to sign up for an open mic comedy night at their local club, the Laugh Lounge. The only problem? They had never done stand-up comedy before. ####, the bright idea. Larry paced around his tiny apartment, waving his hands dramatically. "Bob, listen. Stand-up comedy is easy. We just go on stage, tell a few jokes, people laugh, and we become famous." Bob scratched his head. "But we don't have any jokes." Larry waved him off. "That's the easy part. We'll just make fun of everyday life. People love that." Bob shrugged. "All right, but if this goes wrong, I'm blaming you." ###the rehearsal disaster. They decided to practice their routine in front of their neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, an 80-year-old woman who loved knitting and giving unsolicited advice. Larry cleared his throat. "So, have you ever noticed how socks disappear in the laundry? One moment, you have a pair, and the next, you're wearing one sock and questioning your entire existence." Mrs. Jenkins blinked. "That's not funny. That's just laundry." Bob panicked. "Oh no. We're doomed." Larry laughed nervously. "All right, maybe we need a different angle. How about pets? Bob, you have a cat, right?" Bob nodded. "Yeah, but he doesn't do anything funny. He just sleeps and judges me." Larry snapped his fingers. "Exactly. We'll make fun of how cats think they own the house." Mrs. Jenkins sighed. "Boys, if you want to make people laugh, just tell the truth in a silly way." Bob frowned. "Like how Larry thinks he can cook but once set spaghetti on fire." Mrs. Jenkins chuckled. "Now that's funny." #### the big night. The club was packed. Larry and Bob stood backstage, sweating bullets. Bob whispered, "I don't think I can do this. What if they boo us?" Larry clapped him on the back. "Then we run. But if they laugh, we stay and bask in the glory." The announcer's voice boomed, "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Larry and Bob. They stepped onto the stage, blinded by the spotlight. Larry grabbed the mic. "So, my friend Bob here thought we should try stand-up comedy, and here we are, regretting every life decision that led to this moment." A few chuckles from the audience. Bob gulped. "Yeah, and honestly, the scariest part isn't even being up here. It's making eye contact with my ex in the third row. Hi, Susan. Didn't know you liked comedy." The crowd roared with laughter. #### the unplanned success. Their nervous banter turned into a hilarious back and forth. Larry, Bob once tried to impress a girl by cooking dinner. He made spaghetti, and somehow set water on fire. Bob, it's a talent. You either have it or you don't. Larry, and let's not forget the time Bob thought he could fix his sink. 3 hours later, we had a personal indoor swimming pool. The audience was in tears laughing. As their set ended, the crowd gave them a standing ovation. They walked off stage, stunned. Bob whispered, "Did we just become comedians?" Larry grinned. "Looks like we did. And to think, we almost ran away." And that's how Larry and Bob, two clueless guys, accidentally became the funniest duo in town.